Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Well, when you say government is taxing production, but there's also that argument. They say, look, we're getting to invest in infrastructure development. We want to ensure that people are able to produce and ensure that they pay the requisite tax. So how do you balance that out?
By taxing production, I'm saying that a lot of businesses, when you start, even before you make a penny in profit, you have this list of charges you have to pay to government. That's what I mean by taxing production. Clearly, if at the end of the year you make 1 million naira profit, government tax, nobody can kind of argue with that. But a lot of what's happening here is a lot of charges and levies are front-loaded, to many businesses, and that puts off a lot of businesses. You also have to realize that Nigeria is a nation where you have to almost become your own mini government sometimes to run your own company. Your own electricity supplier, your own water, supplier, your own, security, supplier. All that adds to the cost of doing business. And then you have, all kinds of, charges, left, right, and center.
Now, some people will argue that, yes, indeed, for a lot of, especially MSMEs, they bear the brunt of what it is you're talking about, those charges being front-loaded. But people are going into the businesses anyway. Some people will argue that oftentimes they find a way when they have finally established, and even sometimes when they begin to make profit, to avoid tax. And that's why one would argue that for our economy and for our GDP, we have a really low tax ratio. Some people will say, perhaps maybe that's government's way of saying, you know what, since we know you're going to make a profit anyway, maybe you should pay something first if we know that we'll not be able to catch you on the long run.
No, I think that's what I call lazy government. I mean, I don't think you can. I don't think you can govern on the basis of that, and that will kill a lot of companies. Some will survive those charges, yes, but a lot will not. So it's not best practice. It doesn't. If we're talking of entrepreneurial revolution in the country, we really need to encourage more businesses.
But how do we justify this? I mean, as a people, let's even leave government out of this. If we're talking about a low tax GDP ratio, how do we, I already said let's leave government out of it, but can we, the people, say that we have been very honest in terms of our earnings? I know that the instinct is not to want to pay tax, especially to a government that you don't trust. But when you look at how much government needs to spend and the fact that its primary source of revenue should actually be tax, can we say that as a people we have been fair to government?
Well, first of all, personally, I have a problem with the tax to GDP ratio figures being quoted out there because they're using IRS figures. Tax for me is not just the corporation tax or what you pay IRS. Now, Nigeria has a plethora of taxes. I mean, yesterday I was with somebody who was saying the Industrial Training Fund are harassing him because he needed to pay, by law, a percentage of his, activities into that fund. Police Trust Fund just been signed by the government. They will, Education Trust Fund. There are all these pockets of hypothecated taxes that government they go for companies, to pay. Are they included in this so-called tax to GDP ratio, or are you just talking of the tax collected by IRS? You put a signboard up in your office in Lagos State government can come and say, okay, here is a bill for it. All those are in-code levies and taxes. So you can't just take whatever percentage IRS charges, federal IRS, charges us and say that's tax. In terms of the levy and tax ratio on businesses, it's a lot in this country.
Will that then, because I think it was the NESG, Nigeria Economic Summit Group, quoting some 380 something taxes, that they have to contend with every time. Is that in any way suggesting that government doesn't want businesses to survive?
Well, I don't know. I mean, one would have thought business surviving is in the interest of government. There are so many of them, is what I'm saying. Many people, for example, assume when government set up X-Trust Fund, for example, that maybe a federal land revenue will collect the tax on behalf and then distribute it to those agencies. That's not how it happens. Those agencies now have to set up infrastructure to collect taxes or whatever the levy is, directly from businesses, and you replicate that for each of the agencies. That's a lot. That's a lot of bureaucracy. This is the problem.
And some states, though, in fairness, some states who really want businesses to thrive in their states know that this is a challenge. I think there's been quite some engagement with some state governors. At least, for instance, I know in Kaduna State, if you want to set up a business, all you need to do is in one office. All the taxes you need to pay or whatever it is, levies, they are all in one office. Do you think that would help?
Absolutely. That
At the federal level?
Even at the federal level, yes. I mean, because,
Can that ever happen on the federal level?
Well, you see, the problem, the thing I think in Nigeria is everybody wants their little empires, and therefore it's a fad within the Nigerian system to create silos. So I'd rather have my own silo rather than, work. Exactly. So that's why everywhere you go in government, everybody is a king in their own little kingdom, and that I think is a problem. That is why, even long after Orosany's report, we've more than doubled the number of MDAs now, than when he wrote the report, and it seems the National Assembly, every time they bring out any little law, they attach new agencies to many of these things, and I'm asking myself, there's no unified strategy here. The unified strategy should be, okay, we have 500 MDAs. For every new one to be created, we have to shut one down so that we keep the number on the same. But nobody is thinking of any unified strategy. That's why everything's just
increasing. Don't you think that it's going to be a matter of time? Because if the template they use in Kaduna, where if you want to do some sort of business, just go to this particular shop and we'll do what we can to ensure that we streamline all the charges. They normally have the peer review, I think in the governor's forum. And I think, who knows, if the conversation is at that level, isn't it going to be a matter of time before the states will then look within themselves and think, look, if we don't do something similar, our people will just be on our backs, on our case almost all the time.
I pray that's what happens. I mean, Kaduna is doing the governor of Kaduna is doing a lot of amazing things in terms of, developing the state, but not all the governors are, reading from the same hymn sheet in that sense. And some clearly are complacent. I mean, Lagos is an example of, Lagos is a money spinning machine, you don't need much creativity as a governor to make money in Lagos. Just harass people, they will pay. That seems to be...
Is that what's happening here? The center of excellence? Is that what is happening?
Because you think there should be more creative ways for things. You could attract, for example, bring companies and say, look, we are giving you 3-year tax holiday.
But Ogun State did something similar. Remember, they had several investment summits. Now they are, and I don't know what's going on now though. Maybe they're just trying to find out what happened previously. They had a lot of investors who went into that area as well. They did something right.
Yes, like I said, there are pockets of good practice, but it's not widespread. That's the point I'm making here. But at the end of the day, the key point here is for this country, for this economy to grow, it has to be done through entrepreneurship. History showed that during the Great Depression, more millionaires were created in America than any other time in American history. Because there are more entrepreneurs than there are more jobs to be had. So we can't grow this economy purely on people applying for jobs. We can only grow it through people actually starting businesses.
Do you think that we're overgeneralizing? These are my thoughts. So, for instance, when government increases taxes, say VAT, we're up in arms with government. If the price of electricity is going to go up, even if it's for our own good, we'll all, most people will. Now tolls are about to come back. Yes. The government is thinking of tolls, and we're about to quarrel with government. Yet we know that the roads are bad. Yet we know that the cost of generating electricity, if you're going to be using your generators, is far more than if you paid a little extra for PAT. And some people are already beginning to take that option. We only heard recently, I think some areas here in Lagos, Magodo and all, they're premium customers now. They have electricity for a certain amount of hours every day at a premium. And some people are willing to take that choice. Don't you think that government should have windows whereby if you're interested, yes, it might be general policy because if the road is good, it's good for everybody. But if it is indeed that we want to see better infrastructure, shouldn't we be willing as a people to pay for it?
I agree. And that's why I said that every patriotic Nigerian or any citizen of any country agree that a certain level of taxation is necessary. But it gets to a point where if you continue to increase it, it becomes difficult for people.
How are we at that point yet? Because this taxation doesn't affect everybody. VAT, for instance, will only be when you're buying things that have VAT. Not ordinary goods don't have VAT attached to them.
You see, the thing is, you're talking about this. I mean, I don't want to call you theoretician. You're talking about this from purely government taxation perspective. I was speaking to a friend yesterday who wanted to start a business. He had the option of buying a land and build, or buying a land that already has building on it. And he said he was going for the one that already has building on it, even though the building is not quite suitable for what he wanted. I said, why? He said, because if he starts from scratch, the homoneles will show up at the foundation level.
That's
collect
not
money.
government tax.
But for me, as somebody doing business, it's part of the cost of doing business. So when we're talking about, that's what I'm saying, if you're talking about taxation, we shouldn't look at it purely from whatever percentage Federal Inland Revenue charges. You have to look at it as a business. How much do I pay out?
You still have to think of a moneyless too.
But in that case, the laws have changed on that. I think he needs to test the laws because they've said, look, if anybody comes and harasses you, I think Lagos, even Ogun as well, they have ensured that those kinds of people don't harass people anymore. So they're trying to centralize everything.
I like your confidence. Yeah.
That's what the law says. So
I'm just saying that in reality, even if you call the police or this, if you want to see them, the police will back off.
But there have been cases where they tried it out and it did work. Even though, well, in some cases, maybe not. But I do know about some other cases. But in terms of this, we've had people who have always thought that, look, they get the impression that it comes across as though government is in competition with business. But we've also seen publications about the figures about ease of doing business, how Nigeria has appreciated.
Yeah.
So how do we juxtapose that with all that you say is going on and how businesses are being discouraged, how hard it is to start business?
Well, if you're talking about the ease of doing business, I mean, clearly if you are number, 99 out of 100 and you are now number 90, that's an improvement. You've done better, but 90 is still a bad place to be. So
in reality, in practice, are we there?
Are we there? Are we?
Are the figures real?
Well, I mean, who knows? I mean, the figures in Nigeria is ease of doing business in Nigeria. There are indices with which that is used to measure that. A lot of that is policy related. But in terms of actually how it works in practice, is a different story entirely. For example, take the issue of visa on arrival, right? I don't know whether you know anyone that have tried that. It's an absolute nightmare.
Well, yes.
On paper, yeah,
it depends.
It's easy.
It depends on what happened, or where the person got to, or what exactly transpired. Because yes, I've tried it actually, and it did work. But there are a few things that they need to correct. But the thing about that, not a lot of people know the processes, who and how you need to follow through, and such that you could get your results in good time. So
yeah, but if you go to any country that give visa on arrival, it's easy. It's simple. Just show up. Nigeria's we have attached so many other conditions to it. That is, visa on arrival plus probably should be our own, not just visa on arrival. Because visa on arrival, many countries I know have visa on arrival. You just show, you don't need any, you just show up and they stamp your passport and 5 minutes you're gone.
Is there anybody
that's not what's happening in Lagos here.
You show up and they don't give you?
No, I'm not saying they don't. I'm just saying the processes is not that straightforward. if you look at the requirements, you have to produce, and it's only maybe high-level business folks that actually can get that. Not somebody just walking to Nigeria, and say, I want to visa on arrival. It doesn't work like that.
Totally understand what you're saying. I think it's high time to have Mrs. Jumoke.
One feedback. Whatever it is.
Yeah.
One quick one, Doc. We talked earlier about the states and how they should be encouraging investments and all of that. Well, government has been talking a lot more about, localizing, Nigerians patronizing locally made goods and stuff like that. Do you see the states in that space of encouraging investments, all the states, and you talked about unified strategy the other time. Do you see a unified strategy from the states level now, not just the federal government, where every state, you can go to virtually every state and say, this is what you're likely to meet? Do you see us there now or anytime soon?
Well, we're not there. I mean, what we're actually supposed to have in Nigeria is the states are supposed to not just have a unified strategy, they're supposed to have what we call a mutual recognition scheme, whereby if one state registers you for X, you can take that registration to another state and they recognize that registration and vice versa. So that's what makes nation work. But Nigeria, the states are so far apart in terms of strategy.
So what should we be doing to make it work?
Well, I think the states should come together. They should agree basic strategy, in terms of for example, when Lagos years back started this MOT scheme for cars, for example, that's what killed it, because that's only a Lagos affair. What happens if I'm coming from Kano and get to Lagos and I don't have MOT? So it's only a Lagos affair. So the scheme had to die, because for that to work, every state must have their own equivalent, so to speak. So if you show me a certificate from Kano that says your car is roadworthy, Lagos will recognize it. So one state just doing well will not cut this.
So there you go. We really appreciate your comment on this morning. Dr. Charles Imole is a corporate and governance strategist. Well, we will be back in a moment and turn our attention to a matter that's been generating some, concerns, controversies, whichever you will. It's got to do with the Niger Delta. That is in a moment. Stay with us.